Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Ryan, and today we're going to create a instance in Google Cloud Compute Engine. Now, VM instances are the basic unit of compute in Google Cloud, and you can use it to host a variety of applications, database, or even use it as a proxy for your other applications. So it's very versatile. Now, creating a VM instance is typically one of the most common things you'll do in Google Cloud. So today we're going to create one right now. While this loads, so I'm going to go over the different options you have when it comes to creating a VM instance in Google Cloud. So the first thing you'll see is a name. The name of the instance is what you'll see once the instance is created and how it will be referred to by other services in Google Cloud. Now you can give it a label, which you can use it here. The region is where the VM instance is going to be provisioned, and the zone is the where exactly within the region the VM instance will be provisioned. Now, VM instance is a zonal resource. That means that it will always stay within the zone, and it is very vulnerable to zonal outages and other disasters that occur within the zone. So, as even though VM instances are versatile, they are not very highly available. So when it comes to creating a VM instance, you actually can configure the machine you use for your VM. So when you think about a computer, you typically think about, it has a GPU, it has a CPU, and it has RAM. And typically in this case, we don't typically have a GPU since we're using this as a server. So typically, what the two major components that we look at for VM instances in the cloud is CPU and its memory. So over here, it's actually divided into 4 different categories. So general purpose is typically what you'll use for your servers and your applications. Compute optimized is, if you're doing heavy processing, like video editing, then you might choose compute optimized. Memory optimized is when you do memory intensive tasks like updating your database, putting things into your RAM, whereas GPU is typically used for machine learning. So in Google Cloud, there's actually several generations, but essentially the idea is that you'll have couple machine types for your purpose. Now, you can either choose the number of vCPU cores and the memory that you have for your compute engine in Google Cloud, but typically people choose a set size, which is within either a share core or a standard. Now, depending on what you need, the higher you go, the more CPU and the more memory you provision for your VM instance, the more expensive it's going to be for you. So for example, if we choose a high mem 16, it's going to cost you $500 a month. Whereas if you choose a micro, it's only going to cost you $7.12. So for demonstration purpose, we're actually going to create a standard compute engine. So over here, you can have confidential VM service, which you can actually encrypt your RAM while it's running. And container option is that just means that if you want to create a container application, there is a container optimized OS for your VM instance. Now, boot disk is where you choose to the image for your instance when it starts up. So over here, you actually have a couple choices. You can either have a public image, a custom image, a snapshot, or an existing disk. So the most common option that people choose when it comes to creating fresh instance is the public image. Custom image is typically for, you have made an image before and you want to use that image with an existing application. Snapshot is typically, when you have an existing compute engine, you're trying to restore it, and existing disk, it just means that the compute engine has already been deleted. However, the persistent disk is still on file and you're using a existing disk to boot up your compute engine. Now, in this case, we're actually going to choose Ubuntu because Ubuntu is actually one of my favorite operating systems, we're going to choose 2004 long-term support, and we're going to choose the size of the boot disk at 10 gigabytes. So when you choose your boot disk, the higher the size you choose, the more performant the disk is. However, it will cost more for you. I believe in the free tier, you get 30 gigs of persistent disk for free when you have the free tier on your account. Now, when it comes to identity and access API access, you actually have two options. So service account and you have access scope. Now, let me explain to you what these things are. So service account is the privilege that you give to the service account of the computer. So each computer has a identity within the Google Cloud, which you can give it different privileges to access different services on the cloud. So, for example, in this case, we have a compute engine default service account, which has a certain set of privileges that allows you to access, let's say cloud storage or persistent disk on the Google Cloud, or Cloud SQL. Um, However, you can edit this in the IAM console, which is right over here. And then you have access scopes. So access scopes is the scope which the compute engine can access other Google Cloud services. So I know this might sound a little bit confusing. So let me just repeat. So if, let's say, your service account has access to a particular service in Google Cloud, so let's say it has access to Cloud SQL, but your access scope is allow default access, which does not give you access to Cloud SQL, you will not have access to Cloud SQL. Likewise, if your service account doesn't have access to Cloud SQL, but your access scope is set to allow full access to all cloud APIs, you will not have access to Cloud SQL. However, if both your service account and your access scope have access to Cloud SQL, then the application within your compute engine will have access to Cloud SQL. Now, firewall is the option that allows you to allow HTTP or HTTP traffic into your compute engine. This is when you want to expose your compute engine to external sources. So sometimes you may not necessarily want this to happen, especially if you're looking to keep your compute engine to mostly to the scope of the cloud for security purposes. Um, Over here, you actually have additional options to configure your compute engine. So you have management, security, disks, networking, and sole tenancy. Typically, you can change some of these options, such as you can have a startup script, you can have a preemptible compute engine instance. You can make your compute engine shielded, and your disk, you can delete the boot disk from you can protect the boot disk from deletion when your instance is deleted. You can do networking, you can do sole tenancy, but we're not going to change any of that. So we're just going to hit create, and it's going to create our instance right now. So there you go, our instance is being created. And now the instance has been created. You can actually SSH into your instance to see what is happening there. And now it's loading again. All right, so let's SSH into the instance. Alright guys, we've successfully SSH into the instance. Sometimes it could take a while, but essentially once a compute engine VM instance has been created, you actually have access to a Linux machine in this case. So Google is not very good with Windows operating system. However, all the major Linux operating system is available to you in the public image section. So let's say, for example, right here, we actually have, see, you can make, folders as long as it responds. But essentially, it's identical to actually having your own server, but except it's in the cloud. So once a VM instance is created, you can take a look at its stats when you click on the name. So over here, you have your logs, you have your instance ID, which you can refer to when you're doing direct manipulation of the instance itself. You can see its service account that it's currently using. You can see its access scopes, and as well as you can see the size of its boot disk. Now, in order for you to edit the instance, you actually have to suspend it, but that is for another video. So that's it for today for creating a VM instance. It should be a very introductory lesson to the Google Cloud Console. If you have found this video helpful, leave a like. It will really help motivate me to make further videos like this in the future. Thank you very much. Have a good day.